You can't hear me?
I hear you.
Okay.
Now I know on TV, people, when they're interviewing people on TV from their bedroom, why sometimes it's broken up.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Well, I should say good afternoon, everyone. We are on live. I think we're going to add one more person, and we're going to take one off.
Can they hear me?
We can hear you, yes, sir.
We can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Good. So good
Unfortunately,
morning.
you can see me too. Wow.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I like the phone conferences, not the video. I agree with you.
Yeah, I haven't had a haircut in 2 months. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Alfred Kinney. A part of our web series is to try to get information to residents as much as we possibly can and bring experts into this space to get experts into the space to talk to us about our office, what we do, how we can service you better, as well as provide you information during this crisis situation. And so we were lucky enough to have some great minds to participate in this conversation. And so I would like to introduce them. And they are surrogates from our sister counties. We're going to start off with James LaCorte, surrogate from out of Union County.
Morning, or good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, sir. And we also have, we bring in Bruno as well. We also have Bernice Toledo, our surrogate out of Passaic County.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for having me back on your webcast.
Appreciate you making yourself available. And we also have our surrogate from out of Somerset County, Mr. Frank Bruno.
How's it coming across? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you. Yes, sir. We can hear you. And so a part of this conversation is that we're going to give you enough time. If you have a Facebook page or if you're on live, or if you whatever you have, if you want to share it with your network, please do so at this moment. We want to make sure this conversation is interactive to give our residents enough information so they can make decisions as to what we do with our court and provide people information regarding the process of what we do. With that being said, let me also remind myself to also bring on my deputy surrogate. I'm very proud to call him our deputy and also friend, Devera McDougall.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good.
Hey, Devera.
So let's try this. I know everybody can talk at one time. So please tell us, what is a surrogate? If someone can just define that, and then we'll go into the conversation. And if you have anyone that want to ask questions, please just type those questions in. We'll get those questions answered as much as we possibly can. So who want to tackle that question? What is a surrogate? What do we do?
You want me to take a shot at that?
Sure.
Okay. Surrogate actually means, of course, in the place of, okay? And going back to colonial times, it actually meant in the place of the king, because the king couldn't be every place. Since the king couldn't be every place, and he appointed a surrogate. Now, the surrogate was always responsible for orphans, estates, things of that nature. In 1947, when the New Jersey State Constitution was changed, they kept the title surrogate and made us in charge again of orphans, in charge of incapacitated adults, as processing the necessary paperwork to have people declared incapacitated. But most importantly, our job refers to processing people's estates so that families can access funds when they've lost a loved one. If my other fellow surrogates want to chime in and supplement that, be my guest.
If I could supplement one tiny thing. So in addition to what Surrogate LaCorte said, that we handle matters of the deceased, incapacitated, and the orphan child, we also give access to title searchers to come into our records vaults. So for you to purchase your home, for example, a title search has to be conducted for real estate closing. Our records are reviewed by title searchers so they can go forward with your real estate closing. So we actually handle a variety of things that affect your everyday life, except we're behind the scenes. And finally, we hold funds for minors. So when a minor inherits funds or when a minor receives a civil award, that money goes into a trust fund. If it comes into the surrogate's court trust fund, we hold the money subject to petition to make sure that the money is still there when the child turns 18 years old, so they can buy a house, buy a car, or pay for their education, or whatever they wish at that point. But we want to make sure that the money's there when they turn 18. Anybody else? Did I miss something?
Surrogate Bruno, you would like to add anything?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't get the eloquence of Bernice speaking that she always is, because I didn't get it from my sound with new technology. For some reason, I hear everyone else, but Bernice, I didn't get all of that. But so I'm not sure if I'll repeat it. But certainly, surrogate's court is unique, since most people, even sometimes lawyers, don't recognize the title. So wherever we go, I get people say, "What's your job?" and tell them the Somerset County surrogate, and I get a glazed look, and then about 4 minutes, their mind's occupied, and then they'll come back and say, "But what is that?" So given what Jim had said, Surrogate LaCorte, and Bernice, I'm sure she added a lot to it. Again, it's a little over 300 years that this has been going on, and we feel such an important part of the community because we're like retail to the community. A lot of times people will come to the county and they'll only see freeholders at a meeting, which is very not populated much, only a few people have concerns. They may go to the clerk, certainly for passports, but as the surrogate's court, surrogate's office, we get visitors, citizens, residents each and every day. By the end of the year, they're in the thousands, and we take great pride in working with them in probating the will, as Jim and maybe Bernice had said, and doing the guardianships. And I think it's such an important part that people could actually participate with government and walk away feeling relatively good that government was able to help them and with compassion and concern for their needs. So I think the office, we take a lot of pride in my staff. I know all surrogates are very capable, smart people. So when people come to us and we help probate that will, we want to make sure that we're mistake proof, and we want to send them on their way with more confidence that they can accomplish the business task before them.
There's a follow-up question. I know Judge Bernice said something about title search. And I know we have a lot of people in the past few weeks, we talked more about estate planning related issues, and title search you mentioned. Can you expound on what our office does in terms of impacting the sale of homes, during before this crisis, how it's impacted maybe your office, and any other surrogate can definitely chime in terms of how it has impacted, your title search, the searchers. What is a title searcher? How does it impact title searching? And what maybe changes have you made into your office to make sure that that's accommodated?
So at this time, so what a title searcher does is make sure that the chain of title is perfected before a property can be transferred. You have to look through a lot of records, historical records, to make sure that the chain of title hasn't been broken, that the person who's selling you the house actually has the right to do so. And then they issue an insurance policy in case somebody makes a claim against your house that was sold to you improperly, that you're covered. So what a title searcher does is comes to both the county clerk's office, which is also a constitutional office there, and to the surrogate's court to look at historical records to make sure that the chain of title is perfected. In a nutshell.
I'm sorry, Bernice. If I may add to that, the other reason that the title has to be perfected is so the bank is assured that they're going to have the first mortgage on the property. So in reality, if the title is not perfected, they're not going to lend the money. So we have to make sure that the surrogates have easy access to our records, that the title searchers have easy access to our records so that they can facilitate the title searches so that both the new owner of the property and the bank can be certain that the person that's receiving the funds is going to be the person that's entitled to own the property without any sort of blemish, if you will, on the title.
Okay. And so, based on what's been happening with this COVID-19 situation, have you provided access to those searchers? And if not, what have you done to make sure that there's still a smooth transition of property being sold?
No, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We've provided access, Surrogate Kenny.
Got it.
I don't know about the others, but we allow searchers to have access to our records.
Okay.
So I speak for
We had-
I speak for Essex, and Essex doesn't allow the general public into the building. However, we do allow anyone to do a search if they submit a New Jersey Judiciary Records Request form. Unfortunately, that means that a staff member has to do the search, and by statute, we're required to charge a $10 fee for that. And until the buildings open up to the general public, we have to continue to do that process to protect our staff. Once the buildings open to the general public, searchers and general public can come back in and do searches free of charge. We have an automated system. We have Bluestone. Many of the other surrogates courts have Bluestone that allows you to access our records. Our records, like many other surrogates court, go back to the 1700s. So that's what we're doing right now. You still can do it. Just call us, and we'll direct you to how to get the New Jersey Judiciary Records Request form.
So with respect to us, we stayed open as long as we could, and then of course our doors were shuttered. Our operations have continued with respect to estates and guardianships. With respect to title searchers, things have been delayed. We are, in fact, as of today, I was having a meeting with the county administration to come up with a reintegration plan to see if we can get title searchers back into the courthouse, even if on a reduced number of hours, but they can physically come back in on reduced hours to have access to the records flow. Because after all, if you can't get this done, real estate closings can't happen. So they're in between. They're not exactly members of the public. They're not exactly members of the staff. So there's something in between. Accommodate this bigger public overarching need for it. So we expect to have them back soon, probably next week. But we're working on a safety and reintegration plan, which incidentally the county is working on putting these scanning thermometers, cameras that scan everybody's temperature on the way in and on the way out, so that there could be safety protocols in case anybody walks in with a fever, so that we can prevent any COVID-19 concerns.
Great. Surrogate Bruno?
Well, we have a unique office in the sense that the clerk's office is on one opposite side of the building. We're counter to that. So in between, we have a hallway with a separate entrance, and that we share with the clerk. So we have received phone calls, and we're able to help them through mail or through phone. But of late, to repeat, we're not open to the public, also like the other offices, courts. And those searchers who commonly come in, they have access through the hallway, through the door. We know when they're present, but there's no interference with our activity. And if there's a phone there, if they need some assistance, they could call us. But they have separate, actually, part of the building that they could utilize where all the records are kept. The computers are available and the sources. So we've been able to have that task complete or continue without much interference.
Great.
I think we should point out also that these searches are necessary because these contracts, in a lot of cases, were signed before the emergency declaration was issued by the governor. So even though there are certain restrictions, these contracts were signed maybe in January or February, and they have to proceed. Otherwise, the contract will be breached, and it'll cause a lot of legal issues for both sides of the transaction. So there has to be some sort of, how can I say, continuum so these people can close the title searches.
Okay. And has there been an extension that's been provided by the federal government, by the court, because of what's happening with COVID-19?
Well, if there's going to be an extension, it's going to come from the bank, because typically what happens is they'll put a 60-day commitment on a loan, and it's going to be up to the individual lending institution if they want to extend that commitment on the loan.
Same with the title company, in terms of making and even during the closing, the parties have to agree. It's all contractual. Technically, it's all contractual, so all the parties will work it out. A lot of times they're putting in the contracts, a contingency based on whatever the registrar's office or surrogate's office are doing, so that the deal won't die. So it's really more of the parties that are handling it on their back end, taking into account what's happening with COVID-19 in the various counties. So that they're doing it, like I said, on the back end on their side.
Okay.
You know what, Devero, it's probably going to be a staple in all future real estate contracts that there'll be a contingency for pandemics should another one ever occur, God forbid.
No, I agree. I actually seen at least one or two contracts recently that made mention of COVID-19 and giving the parties the flexibility to extend whatever deadlines that were in the contract. So some attorneys are starting to do it.
Sure.
So one of the major parts about estate planning, outside of what you just explained, is about the unfortunately, we've seen in Essex County, we've seen a large number of deaths that happen in our county. If you can,
1,500.
Yeah, 1,500. And last time we spoke, it was at 1,407. We've exceeded 1,500 deaths. How has COVID-19 impacted your office in terms of the death, in terms of the amount of work that you received in the last 2 months? How much stress is put on your staff?
So I'll start by saying that unfortunately, that's a real high number you have there, and it's sad to hear those numbers. We have certainly in Somerset County, we have smaller borough towns which have large populations for a small borough, and then we have some towns that are more rural, so the population's a lot different. We've had about 400 deaths, and certainly many of them, as you probably have, and throughout the state, have been from nursing homes and elderly people. And then there's that's probably around 40-some%. The rest being of all ages, at least in our area, maybe 30s and above. But it has, in the beginning, was a little bit difficult because people who required to have money and access to the money in the first few weeks, we had to scramble around. But as we repeat, we have no access at this time to the building. So we're very convenient because we're located down the stairs way to a road. So we've done two procedures, one by mail, which I'm sure you all have been performing that by mail. And then we have some people who want to get it done quicker. So we'll have them drive up. In the beginning, we had a sheriff's officer, and now we have one of our staff who wears a mask. The people who come wear a mask. They'll pull up in their car. We'll run the paperwork in if it's of a timely fashion, and we'll complete that paperwork and get it signed and returned. The people who don't come in person outside of the building, the majority of them is through mail, and they have access, we tell them, to get a notary. And so far, people have not had the problem of having access to a notary. We do not use Zoom because Zoom, we tell people that their records will be on a video, their personal records, and they're hesitant to do Zoom, so they'll withdraw and say, I'll just drive it in. And so again, we're starting to catch up. In the beginning was a scramble, but now we're starting to meet our obligations.
Surrogate Toledo?
So same thing. When it first happened, we were a little bit, we were scrambling a little bit. But ever since then, we sort of have a system in place. We receive things by mail. There is some curbside pickup. We've even done some, and it's not all, we actually done some house calls or driveway calls when nobody actually goes into the house for safety reasons. But we've had things moving along. Now, Passaic County is probably the 4th highest in the state of New Jersey in terms of cases. So we certainly have been impacted, including my own staff, but we're at a place where we have a good system in place. I have great staff for whom I'm thankful for, and we are getting the job done. There are delays in place naturally, but it's getting done, and it's getting done in a reasonable amount of time.
In Union County, what I've been able to observe, well, let's start with the basic premise. We've had about 1,000 deaths in Union County, just a little under as related to the COVID virus. However, just about half of those deaths have occurred in nursing homes or assisted living facilities. And as such, the people that have passed away in those facilities are usually on some form of Medicaid. And since they are on Medicaid, there are really no assets in the estate that have to be accessed by any family members. Even more sadly, a lot of people that have passed away in Union County not only have passed away without assets, but even more sadly, they passed away without anybody that's considered to be a close relative. So we don't have to really process any estates with regard to people that die with those two elements. However, as far as the I can't call anything normal in these times, but as part of the everyday surrogate work, we're able to process the paperwork by telephone, by mail, by email, or by other forms of communication outside of personal appearance, which we usually do here at the Surrogates Court. We're running about a week behind, but we are able to eventually get the necessary paperwork out to the client as expeditiously as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a question, three questions that came in. I'm going to read the first one by Sarah. If the executor on a will lives out of state and there's no bond stated on the will, how do we proceed?
If you don't mind, I'll answer, because it actually is in line with what the other surrogates were talking about, basically what our process is. So our process right now, unfortunately, we don't have the ability to do the curb pickup, but we are accepting telephone calls to explain the process, and our process is mail-in process. Our probate clerks are here to explain the process. We fortunately have a website that have our forms on the website, and you can pull the forms down, call us here, 973-621-4901. Ask for a probate clerk. They'll walk you through the forms, make sure you have the right package, whether it's probate, administration. They'll walk you through that, and so then you can mail it in, and we'll process it. Fortunately for Essex, we've been doing mail-ins. Prior to that, it was primarily attorneys doing it. Now we see a lot more mail-ins because the public can't gain access. So we're seeing more of the public as well as attorneys processing it. And as the other surrogate said, we see the same thing in terms of, the deaths, the population, the 1,500, primarily our elderly. But we are getting a lot more applications in that indicate that those individuals did pass away due to COVID. So Essex is a different county because we have a mixture of, middle, low income and wealthy cities within the county. So we still get a chance to see, not get a chance, but we are seeing a lot more wills being probated. Very few administrations, but I think partly that's due to the fact that individuals who will be doing it themselves, pro se litigants, aren't comfortable doing it by mail. They're waiting for us probably to open up the doors, but definitely a lot more wills are coming in than we had prior to the pandemic. And so for Sarah, just call us. I gave out the numbers. Give us a call. Talk to a probate clerk, and walk you through the paperwork and let you know what to do in terms of mailing it in, and we'll process the will.
There was a question that came from Crystal West Edwards. She's actually one of the attorneys that we were fortunate enough to have on our web series. Are the responsive office accepting remotely notarized by an NJ notary qualification and renunciation papers where the signatures are out of state and in some cases out of country? I am particularly interested in response from Essex and Passaic. So if you can see the questions below, Judge Toledo.
So I will answer that by saying, if it's done properly, according to, I think it's Executive Order 104, I can't remember what it is, and whatever the bill was that passed to allow remote notary, if it's done properly in accordance to that bill that passed, we will accept it. But we need original documents because, I will say that I spoke to our assignment judge here in Essex, and we didn't see anything would allow us to accept copies. Everything still has to be original. It's just on the notary to properly make sure that they get the proper acknowledgement of the individual that has signed the paperwork. So if it's done that way, we will accept it. We just unfortunately need to see original documents still.
Anyone else?
That's correct. We do accept it remotely notarized. Sometimes just to accelerate the process, they'll email us the documents so that we have the data and we can start processing the estate file. But the fact is that until we have the originals, we can't complete the process and issue letters testamentary or letters of administration. So we do need the originals. It's the law.
Great.
I just, even though it wasn't directed to Union County, and I guess that's a good thing, but I would just caution lawyers that eventually they're the ones that are going to have to answer for the manner or the procedure that was followed in order to obtain these necessary notary acknowledgments, and they should do whatever they feel makes them comfortable, so that they're not in some way placed in jeopardy in the future if something was not done properly and becomes the subject matter of a lawsuit. So I would caution lawyers to be the more careful for taking care of their own selves, as well as their clients. They should be a particular notice on how these procedures are followed. Not so well, again, yes, for the client, but also for their own protection later in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a question that came in regarding how can I search my dad's information for unclaimed monies?
Unclaimed money. There is a website that, and you could just Google unclaimed money, unclaimed property, and the website will pop up and actually let you go to almost every state. It'll direct you to each state's unclaimed property website. New Jersey does have one. I don't know the name of it, so just Google unclaimed property, New Jersey unclaimed property, and it'll come up. And then just follow the instructions there, the name. It'll give you the general information. Once it'll search the name and then provide you all the names, because maybe multiple, especially if your relative has a common name, you're going to see lots of those names. So you're going to have to thoroughly look through it. But if your family member has a unique name, if their name pops up, then it'll pop up. It'll give you general information. And then you can contact unclaimed property, and they'll walk you through the application process.
So
Great.
the website for that is missingmoney.com. Again, the website for that is missingmoney.com. The state of New Jersey, Department of Treasury, Unclaimed Property Administration, the UPA, participates with about 38 other states in that one website, missingmoney.com. You can fill out a claim form online. If you fill it out online, it does ask you for sensitive information like your social security number. I can tell you from personal experience, many of my clients have come in and have used it and have entered their social security number. They get their information in the mail, and it's fine. If you are not comfortable with that, you look it up online anyway, missingmoney.com, so that you can get your claim number, and then you can write the Unclaimed Property Administration in Trenton with the claim number asking for it. Many times on the website, it doesn't let you know how much it'll be. It just says that there's some sort of fund there. My experience is that within, and this is pre-COVID, my experience is that in about 2 to 3 weeks, when you fill out the online claim form, you'll get a form indicating that the money is forthcoming, what the source of the money is, and what interest it's earned. And then about 2 or 3 weeks after that, so total process is about 6 weeks, you'll get your check in the mail. And again, that's missingmoney.com.
And then I just Crystal West helped her out here as well, and she posted that New Jersey's is www.unclaimedproperty.nj.gov. So that's New Jersey.
But that will redirect you when you go there to actually conduct the search. It will redirect you to missingmoney.com.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm not sure if Bernice covered this because I couldn't hear all of it, but make sure that people understand that it is a free, you get the information free from the state, because there are people on the internet who like to charge you and think that we found money for you, and they'll just utilize the same service that they're getting for free but charge you. So a word of caution, make sure you're going to the state website, which is a free website, so you can get access without paying.
Correct.
Excellent point.
Very important point. There was a question that came in. Why is it required for, here we go. Why is it required for the administrator to be a bonded? So first, explain the process, then the bonding process, and why is it required for an administrator to be bonded?
Well, I think every surrogate probably uses a different philosophy in order to arrive at the bond, but generally speaking, all administrators are bound. The question becomes whether it's going to be a personal bond or a surety bond. I think what the question is probably referring to, why is it a surety bond instead of a personal bond, is probably what they're more interested in. And in Union County, I use surety bonds to protect the other beneficiaries that are not acting in the fiduciary capacity as the administrator of the estate is. So in other words, there is it's like ensuring that the administrator is going to carry out his duties appropriately and that funds will not be misappropriated. That's why I use surety. That's the standard I use for a surety bond. But in some cases, if let's say there's two heirs and only one is acting, I'll only bond for half the amount, figuring that if the administrator misappropriates the funds, he really can't misappropriate funds from himself. So he can only misappropriate funds that belong to the other beneficiary. So I'll only bond for one half of the maximum of the gross amount. I hope that answers the question.
And I will just add to that statutorily it's required.
Yes, one way or the other. To the surrogate.
Right. For the reasons that Surrogate LaCorte gave, it's required by law.
Right.
And so during this COVID-19 situation, how I mean, are the office open? Is there any, has there been any difficulties to get a bond? Like, because how has that experience been with your constituents?
Some of our more reliable bond.
Insurance agents reach out to us and let us know that they've instituted remote processes to issue bonds. So just like everybody else is adapting, so are insurance agents. So insurance agents that deal in surety bonds, they have a system in place and they can still issue. That hasn't been a problem.
Yeah, I concur with Bernice.
Hold on. Is there a hearing problem? I see everybody leaning forward. Hold on. I see everybody leaning forward, which means nobody can hear me.
We can hear you better. We can hear you better now.
My back hurts.
Stacy asked a question. Can your office provide a cheat sheet? And this maybe goes for all local districts in your respective counties. Provide a cheat sheet to local school districts for student support teams that can assist families.
In what exactly? In the probate procedure?
In the probate procedures. So my based on where I think Stacy works, I think she works in the school district, and I think that she might be asking a question as it relates to guardianship matters. I think that's what she's referring to.
Adult guardianship.
If Stacy can come back and ask a follow-up question to get more clarification as to what specific that she's asking for, that'd be helpful.
I think if I may, sure. If she works, you say she works for a school district surrogate?
She works for a school district, yes.
Oh, okay. A lot of times people need they'll think they'll need a guardianship because they're registering a child in a school that is temporarily up here from a relative's place somewhere else outside of New Jersey, and that the child is going to be temporarily residing in New Jersey with another relative. Maybe that's what she's referring to. I just want to caution people that according to case law, either a guardianship or a custodial arrangement is appropriate for enrolling a child in a school. At least that's the case law. I can't speak. Am I out of here?
No, you're listening.
The picture faded. I think my phone's running out. Anyway. All right, I'll just keep talking, and even it's probably a break. You can't see me. Anyway, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, if a custodial arrangement is going to be sufficient, then I would recommend to prospective people in that position that they get a custodial arrangement from a judge rather than a guardianship or order from the surrogates court, because that's more permanent in nature and would take a much longer proceeding to change back to the original parent, should that become the intention of the parties involved. But if she's calling from a school district, that may be in fact what she's referring to. And I would recommend to that school district or any school district that if possible, the custodial arrangement be imposed rather than the guardianship.
Got it. So
is that okay?
You answered a follow-up question, but her initial question was regarding with COVID-19. She said she has parents, grandparents that passed unexpectedly, issues with registration, a senior graduating, and she didn't finish.
But I would say I agree with Surrogate LaCorte.
Yeah.
That you would much rather be better off looking at family court. That's a custodial matter that you want to deal with. When you start talking about guardianship, when it comes to estate planning, things of that nature, a lot of that is more in nature of the estate, being in charge of the estate, and it depends on which judge you're dealing with. I know our former assignment judge in the probate part, Judge Kapowski, who's still here on a recall. He did not like to touch anything that was more custodial in nature. So family court is, in all likelihood, the more appropriate place for your family members to go to handle custody, because you can have residential as well as legal custodies, which are two different things. So I would recommend they seek out an attorney that handles family matters. And I just want to also point out, it looks like she works for the Newark Vocational High School. Correct me if I'm wrong, Surrogate Kenny. We actually are going to have a Zoom meeting with the VOTEC to talk about adult guardianship when a minor who is under, so that means in Jersey, somebody under 18, when they turn 18 and they have developmental issues, they have to, if the parent wants to continue to take care of them, they have to get them declared incapacitated so that a guardian can be appointed. So if that's also what you want to know about as well, we have a Zoom meeting later on with the VOTEC to kind of talk to you about that as well. And that'll be at 6:30, I believe, right? Sorry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it. And so it seemed like we lost Bernice. I think Mr. LaCorte, Surrogate LaCorte just dropped off. We can get him back at some point. Okay, Bernice Toledo is joining us. Surrogate Toledo is joining us again. We have her.
And while you're doing that,
and so we also want
to point out on that we've actually done a webcast for guardianship. So go to our Facebook page as well. We had Professor Charles Affont that joined us. He is a law professor from Rutgers Law School here in Newark. I think you will also find that useful as well, and your parents will find that useful as well. So we did that 2 weeks ago. So look for that webcast on adult guardianship. He went through venue and the requirements in terms of doctor certifications, using an IEP as opposed to doctor certification. So I think you also find that Miss is it Regine? I hope I said that correctly. You'll find that also useful as well. So check out the book page. Okay.
I want to follow up, since we're talking about children, and I know last week we had a conversation regarding adoptions, and maybe the surrogates can answer this question regarding how has the this COVID-19 situation impacted your ability to conduct adoptions within your respective counties, and what can we do to make sure that those parents who are waiting to become those adults who are waiting to become parents, in whatever circumstances, what can they do to make sure that their cases are still going to be heard? What's happening with that situation? If you can follow up and answer that.
So in Passaic County, I can tell you that our adoptions went virtually uninterrupted. First, we went on quarantine, I guess, March 24th. Adoption days are every other week, so twice a month. And our first adoption day after the quarantine was April 9th. It went uninterrupted and has gone forward ever since then without interruption. The only thing is that instead of coming into court and having the whole ceremony, which is, very touching and wonderful for the whole family, it's done remotely. But we collaborate with the state court. So we, as a surrogate, we work in two capacities. We're the judge of the surrogates court, which is a county level court, and we're also the deputy clerk to the state court. So we receive the filings for adoptions, we process them, we get everything together on the county level, but the finalization is conducted on the state court. The judgment of adoption is entered in the state court, and we have collaborated with our state court judges and the family court. They've been terrific. That part has been seamless, completely seamless.
Surrogate Bruno?
Well, again, unfortunately, I couldn't hear all of what Bernice said, so I hope I'm not repetitive. We haven't had that many adoptions. We have some pending, but our Superior Court judge was able to do state adoptions, most of it being getting the paperwork ready with the attorneys and doing a certainly video. And then they had make some brief appearances. It's a great ceremony, and it's sad that we can't have the ceremony, more of them take place. But during this period, I'll be on a conference call tomorrow with the Judiciary Office in Trenton, and be part of what we'll be talking about will be adoptions and hopefully opening more access. But again, in Somerset County, we haven't had the large number, and a majority of them have been state adoptions that from foster homes and such. So we'll continue, and again, in the future, we hope that'll open up so people could have the easier convenience and certainly the joy of being in a public place when we perform that adoption in our Superior Court.
And for Essex, if the application is complete, just like with Passaic, it's seamless. We'll process it. We'll set up the hearing date, but it is left up to the judge to determine whether or not their calendar will allow them to go ahead and have the adoption, virtual adoption. They're doing Zoom adoptions, I believe. I think we've had a handful done, far less than we were doing before COVID-19. But it's more incumbent on the attorneys that are handling to make sure that everything that should be in place in terms of the application is in place, whether that's home studies, so forth and so on, which may be difficult at this time for them to do as well. But if the application is completely processed, it's complete when it comes to us, we will process it and get it over to the family court judge to handle the matter, and then that judge will determine whether or not their calendar will allow them to do virtual adoption. But I agree with Surrogate Bruno. It would be great if they could be there, because as we talked about in the past, adoption is like one of the best days that everybody in the court will have. Other than adoption, most people don't leave court. Everybody doesn't leave court too happy. But with adoption, everybody leaves court happy. You have the judges crying, even some of the sheriffs crying. So everybody enjoys adoptions. So hopefully we can get back to having the adoptions in the courtroom real soon.
But Devera, I have a follow-up question. It's regarding the process of adoption. Part of the adoption is an inspection. How can that be conducted during this time frame? Is that being conducted during this time frame?
Are you talking about the home study?
Home study, yes.
The home study. Well, the home study, by the way, we actually have a web series on adoption as well. So check out our Facebook page. We did adoption last week, the home studies are required. You can't get around that. So it's a matter of talking to the agencies that handle the home study to discuss that. That part is really not a surrogate's responsibility. It's just we're responsible for making sure that the home studies have been done before we send the application over to the judge. Correct me if I'm wrong, other surrogates.
That's correct. That's
right.
usually
to talk about that, Joy. Just a little side note. Twice last year, we had a family. They visited with a couple of the children. That it was a large family, and when the family saw that they were going to separate the sisters and the brothers, they decided to adopt all six. So that was a very emotional day. That these two people saw the fact that they were heartbroken that they were going to take one of the youngest away from this nice, beautiful family. So they last minute they went through the process and said, you know what, we'll take all 6. And that was some special day to see a couple that had to be at least near 60 take on a family of 6 of all ages. And I thought that was an impressive family and a great people that could do that.
There was a question that came in, and I think it's definitely related to the question of adoption. Can grandparents adopt? What if they live in another state, such as Pennsylvania? Will they do a home study there? When a parent dies unexpectedly and may not have a will, if her parents are alive, can they get or go for grandparents' rights? How do they start? It's a long question.
It's many components, but let's start with the out-of-state with grandparents. Can grandparents adopt? Anybody can adopt if they meet the requirements, if they pass the home study, the criminal background check. If it's through DCP&P, which is child protection, they institute for out-of-state grandparents, let's say, or any out-of-state relative or relative resource, they initiate it pursuant to the interstate compact. It is a very complicated process that should not be circumvented. In my previous life, I was a Deputy Attorney General for Child Protective Services. And what I can tell you is it's a very delicate process where if a child is not placed pursuant to the interstate compact and done properly so, sure, you can place the child, but there will be no monies coming forth for that child, including Medicaid if you need it. Anything that would come forward from the state is done. It's cut off. So when it's an out-of-state placement, you just have to make sure that you go through the interstate compact and follow the law. You have to be properly guided by your attorney or your caseworker if you're dealing with DCP&P.
Devero, would you like to add anything, or Surrogate?
I'm with Surrogate Toledo. The simple answer is yes, and I would suggest that you do get an attorney when they start asking questions about the will and how that works. I think because it starts to get a little bit complicated, even for attorneys, it's complicated, especially attorneys that don't handle this on a regular basis. So the more moving parts there is, grandparents, if the other parent is alive, now that's a different issue, because if that parent rights haven't been terminated, they're entitled to have a say on whether that child gets adopted or not. So I think in this case, you definitely want to talk to an attorney that focuses on adoptions.
So I want to go back to the will part of it. And so maybe Surrogate Bruno and Surrogate Toledo can answer this question, because I know we stress this in our office about the importance of having a will. I mean, during this COVID-19 situation, we witnessed a number of sudden deaths, and as Surrogate LaCorte said, a lot of our, deaths that we witness are in nursing homes, but there are also some parents who have died, who have maybe young children, who have estates, but are dying, but they didn't have a will. Like, how critical is having a will, especially in light of what's happening today? Anyone could take a stab at that question.
Well, I'll go back to start by saying that, as you said, this was a severe crisis. One that was in our time a very severe crisis was certainly the Twin Towers. Now, again, we're not as populated as your counties, but we've had, especially from one town in the northern part of Somerset County, where there was a train station. So the people had moved there because of the access. We lost 38 people in the attack on the Twin Towers. They were all financial people. They were relatively young people. And out of 38, I think 32 didn't have wills. And it led to a lot of predicaments. One young lady who had a mother who left the family and moved back to England. The father's gone, and she was a teenager. Without that will, it presents a unique set of problems. So again, the general idea is we choose, if you don't have a will and you want to choose how to distribute your assets, it's best for you to do that. Since you worked all your life for these assets, you have that determination. Again, if you don't, then we'll make that determination, but it's by law. We just don't make it willy-nilly. We make it based on bloodlines. So the distribution may not be what the party who's deceased had their intentions. So sometimes there's personal items that they can leave to a specific family member, child, children, or whatever, those things can be set beautifully in a will. A will in New Jersey is a simple application. It's not costly, and it's so important to have completed. And we know other states a little more difficult, like Florida, but in New Jersey, for maybe $500, $600, $700, $800 for a simple will, they certainly graduate if there's trust involved. But for that money, you could have peace of mind that you're going to distribute your hardworking asset to your family according to your desire. And it only takes 25, 30 minutes to process it. That book that came out, How to Avoid Probate, certainly tarnishes the easy process of a will. And but again, having that will is so important. And a lot of people try to avoid it because you're dealing with the subject that makes people feel uncomfortable. And I do have a lot of cases where mom and dad, as you mentioned, COVID, they didn't expect to get sick. And then they're in a hospital and they're under heavy medication. And then the children are saying, you should sign this or you should do this. And when they're under heavy medication, no longer that will can be easily challenged because, again, they might be of common or right mind. So doing it early, getting that will completed is an excellent way to make you feel at peace.
Thank you. Surrogate Toledo?
That's correct. One can have a testamentary guardianship where one names somebody to take care of your child. I see everybody leaning in again. Can you not hear me?
No, we can hear you.
I leaned to learn. That's what I use.
A testamentary guardianship where one names somebody to be in charge of your child in the event of your death. You should keep in mind that, though, that is not dispositive of who will have your child. It is persuasive to the court, but if a battle ensues, the court will look to the best interest standard of the child, taking into some persuasion that you named a particular person. But the reason why that happens, even though you may have a testamentary guardianship in place, is because you may name, Aunt Mabel, to be in charge of your child, but something may happen to Aunt Mabel. Maybe she has had an accident. Maybe she's no longer willing or able to do it. Maybe she's developed a drug problem. So if something like that happens, the court won't be bound by the testamentary guardianship. In all other respects, everybody's bound by it. The guiding instrument is the will. But with respect to that, when you're dealing with children, you have to be mindful that it is persuasive, but not dispositive of what will happen to your children.
And for the non-lawyers, dispositive means?
Sorry. Oh, so it's not going to be the end of the issue. The court is not going to take whatever you wrote in your will and be bound by it. So it can sort of help to convince the court. It's like you speaking from the grave, but it won't be the absolute positive determination of what will happen. And
just to add to that, everybody needs to keep in mind that when the courts do anything with children, they're looking at the best interest of the child, not the adults involved. And so as Surrogate Toledo said, when the court looks at it and they're looking at the will, they use it as their guide, and it may end up being what the court decides they want. They want to go by what the decedent requested, but if they don't feel it's in the best interest of the child, they're not going to abide by it. So best interest, remember that anything with any family member with children, it's always the best interest of the child. That if you don't take anything away from anything we said in terms of family court, always remember children, best interest of a child.
Yeah. And I want to go back for a second to what Surrogate and Bruno shared, regarding 9/11, and 32 of the 38 people who died didn't have a will. It kind of highlights the fact is that we try to stress that, having a will or not having a will knows no income bracket. It's not something that we expect everyone to have, but we need you to, for folks who are listening, folks who are participating in this conversation, is to make that a critical asset or critical toolbox and something that you need to protect your family, because it can happen to any one of us. And we've seen situations where, parents, two parents at the same time have came down with this come down with this COVID-19 situation or got into an accident, together, and they have children or they have assets and something needs to happen. And so, it's critical to write that stuff down as fast and as much as we possibly can. And so another question was brought up regarding, in the hospital, person is maybe not in their right mind. What can someone do to protect themselves? Like what tools do we have that can protect that family or that family member, if they're not in their right mind, from being taken advantage of?
Okay, I'll start off by indicating, because we just talked about wills, which is part of estate planning. Also part of estate planning is doing durable power of attorney, advanced directives. So that's the other component of estate planning you want to have. And also insurance can be a component of that. But if for whatever reason, given the circumstance we're in now, COVID-19, let's say proper planning wasn't done. Now we're talking about adult guardianship. And I'll pass the baton to one of the surrogates to talk a little bit more about the adult guardianship.
I didn't hear that.
I said that I'll pass the baton to one of you to talk about how we handle adult guardianship in the surrogates court.
Oh, for people who lose capacity.
Right.
Who don't have or lose capacity. Correct. So an adult guardianship comes into play. Well, first you started talking about a power of attorney. That means when you have capacity and you are within your right mind and you have the capacity to transact, you know where you are and what you need to accomplish, that you select an agent to act on your behalf. And the durable part of the power of attorney means that right now you're in your right mind, but should you get amnesia, like we see in the soap operas, should you lose your capacity, that person can still act on your behalf. If you're in a coma, even though you can't supervise in any way, shape, or form, that you can. The difference with an adult guardianship is that when you start the process, that person already has no capacity. Either from a lifetime of developmental delay, they don't have the cognitive ability, let's say they have Down syndrome or a form of autism, they've never had the capacity, or they have it, but they're starting to lose it. And think of grandmother with Alzheimer's. So, she's starting to lose her capacity, so you start preparing by demonstrating to the court that she has deteriorated capacity. Her diagnosis is, let's say, Alzheimer's, and her prognosis is that she will not improve. So an application, a complaint, and an order to show cause is filed with the court, with the surrogates court. It's heard in the state superior court. And after all the requirements are met, which means 2 doctor's certifications and various requirements, then the court will appoint the applicant to be in charge of the person who lost their capacity, of grandma with Alzheimer's, the person who could no longer handle their affairs.
And I'll just add, just so everybody can know, once you start the adult guardianship process, the court would also appoint an attorney for the alleged incapacitated person to act on their behalf, not what's in their best interest, like with a child, but to act as their attorney. And as long as it's not what they ask that attorney to do is not considered patently absurd, that attorney is supposed to be their zealous advocate. So they're going to appoint an attorney for them to represent their interests, because you're asking a court to take away with somebody's constitutional rights. So I just wanted to point that out as well. Part of the process, they will have an attorney appointed to them, especially if they can't afford to get an attorney themselves.
Sure. That attorney acts as the eyes and ears of the court, of the judge himself or herself. Lets the judge know what they've seen, what they recommend, what steps should be taken. Because we have our doctor certification, but you want somebody to actually visibly have contact with the alleged incapacitated person before you make such a move.
Are there any resources provided to that individual, or are there any guidelines they have to adhere to?
After an appointment, you mean?
Yes. So
after they've been incapacitated.
Well,
yes. After there's been an adjudication, that means the judge has ruled on something. An adjudication determining that person incapacitated. Then there will be yearly follow-up. So the person in charge of the incapacitated will have to file an annual report with the court to let them know that the incapacitated is still alive, is still with us. If there's some assets, to let us know what a casual accounting, if it's not too sophisticated, what money was had at the beginning of the year, what it was spent on, and what's left over. but it's a way of the court knowing where our incapacitateds are and how we can keep after them. Once somebody has been adjudicated incapacitated, you have now the court involved in your life. So let's say you want to move to Florida because you want to retire. You can't just up and leave with your incapacitated person. You have to reach out to the court, let them know, and make an application for essentially permission to leave the state or transfer the file over to the receiving state so that that receiving state can supervise the incapacitated. You just want to protect, just like with children, you want to protect our most vulnerable people.
Thank you. I know we are brushing up against actually it's 1 o'clock at this moment. I wanted to end, in this conversation on a few notes. One, I know I personally wanted to give you an opportunity to thank your staff, because I want to do that myself. Our staff. I wanted to first let me talk about Essex County, and then you guys get a chance to talk about your respective counties. But in Essex County, I just wanted to talk about the fact is that our workers, your workers, our workers are in the front line doing a lot of work that a number of individuals are not looking at or seeing themselves. They're coming in, they're processing forms, they're talking with the public, providing them information at some of the most brutal times, facing sudden death, and it's something that I wanted to recognize that we have some, and I know your staff is excellent as well. We have some tremendous people that work in all our offices who are doing some tremendous work, who either working from home or working and leaving their families to come into the office to provide as much information and also process as much information as they possibly can. So I just wanted to take the time to recognize them and the sacrifice they've made. But also we've had people in our office who've been impacted by COVID-19, where family members have lost their lives as a result of COVID-19, and they still found themselves coming to the office to provide assistance, to help people, because this is just who they are. This is what they do. They're just public servants, and they love to serve people. And so I just wanted to tell, the Surrogate's office in Essex County, my team, you guys are doing a tremendous job. And I want to encourage anyone who's listening to this conversation to contact our office if you need assistance, if you need guidance. We have a number of people who are online who have been providing information as attorneys or notaries or anyone that's dealing with life. We have a young lady named Makima Noel, who is providing information regarding guardianship matters that deal with her child. But we wanted to make sure that we encourage people to use this as a resource. But also, I wanted to recognize our team for doing an excellent job. So just want to share that.
I agree. My staff has really come forward. In Passaic County, we have beautiful seasoned staff that really care. This is a pandemic. It's affecting everybody, including my staff members. And you call them, frontline workers. I call them last responders, right? So after the ambulance, after the funeral director, after the music is done and it's quiet, you have your last responders, and that's us. That's the Surrogates Court. We come to help you transact, to move on with your life, to get the closure you need, and do that by getting access to the bank accounts, by being able to transfer your car, by being able to sell the house. You can only do that, though, with help from the Surrogates Court, and we're here to serve. My staff has been phenomenal, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you, Surrogate Kenny, for giving me a chance to speak to the public, and also to let my own staff know how much I appreciate them during this time. Thank you.
Surrogate Bruno?
Yes, I concur with some of the descriptions you have given, and the fact is that you've touched on many, and I know people's one thing I noticed that when we're open to the public and continuing now, how grateful people are when they see the service under these conditions that we have provided. They come with an emotion of losing loved ones, and the office certainly is different than the reputation that government has of public servants. I know yours and our staff is very compassionate. They have families of their own, they have children of their own, and they're coming to work under conditions where they have to find babysitters or whatever, and they've lost loved ones themselves, and so emotionally they feel the brunt of COVID, but they're also stepping up to perform these tasks and making sure people have access and ease their, at least their emotional pain by seeing efficiency, by seeing people get their paperwork in a timely and factual fashion. So government gets a lot of criticism, but with unknown faces. But I know the staffs are all great family people. They're all great public servants. And so my hat goes off to all the surrogate staffs in New Jersey who stepped up for this important time.
Thank you. DeVero?
Everybody said it. I just concur with everybody. I think our staff, I think the staffs of the other surrogates court. I mean, I know I've had conversation with various surrogates or members of surrogates court. When I had questions or they had questions, a lot of times we have to help constituents in another county and vice versa. So I thank them for assisting us when we need assistance. I will say here for Essex County, I just need to recognize our chief probate clerk, Evan Rivera, who's been here almost 40 years.
You're not supposed to say that, DeVero. Did she let you say it?
Yeah, I can say how long she's been here. I didn't say how old she was. So I have to recognize her because she's excellent. I can speak for myself. When I came on board here, any of my success is because of someone like Evelyn, Joanne, and all the staff that's been Joanne Consolis, John Lawton, Tawana Vaden, Tara Wilson. Those were individuals that were here when I got here, who made my transition easy, and who continue to make the unfortunate experience that people are having with the loss of a loved one easy as possible, because it's not an easy process. When you talk about doing estate planning, the reason why we say you need to do estate planning is because we understand from our side of the table that this is a tremendous loss for people, and it's very stressful. There could be a lot of legal matters involved, and we have to explain it to people, and we can see that it's causing more stress on top of the stress they already have from the loss of a loved one. So we try to understand, not try, we do understand where people are coming from, because we've all lost family members. Matter of fact, I'll speak for myself. Last year I lost 5 family members, 1 month after another. So we've all personally dealt with loss. We know what you're feeling. So we try to help you out and be patient. But our staff here does that every day, does a wonderful job, whether it's a pandemic or not. So as both Surrogate Toledo and Surrogate Bruno said, we're here for you. We'll continue to be here for you. Just be patient with us in these times, because we are a little bit more inundated. And I also want to thank everybody who tuned in this week, but every other week, to allow us to continue to do our community outreach that we've been doing over the last 5 to 6 weeks. And I want to thank Surrogate Kenny for having the foresight to know that we needed to do something like this for everyone.
Oh, thank you, DeVero. I appreciate you. I left on the bottom of your page, you should see all the surrogate websites from Union County, Somerset, and Passaic. So if you need assistance and need help, call them. Don't wait. Call them. Go to their website, get information, learn about how our office impact your family. They're available. We're available, to make sure that we're able to assist. And as many times I talk to Deputy Surrogate DeVero about, our role. Our role is always constantly to serve the public. You are our boss. You are the individuals that we service and we work for. And so please don't hesitate about using our office to make sure we're able to get you the information when you need it, as you need it. To the fellow surrogates, I want to say on behalf of Essex County, I appreciate you and thank you, because I know your time is valuable and you sacrificed yourself, for us. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good job.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye, everyone.